All right, hi and welcome. I'm Patrick Walsh, and I'm going to show you how to get Nix installed on macOS. This is a brand new virtual machine that's never really been used for anything. And so the first thing I'm going to do here is we're going to open up nixos.org. Cool. If we want to understand how to install it, we're going to just go and we're going to copy this ugly run a remote bash script from the internet thing, which is generally speaking not recommended. Also, what we're doing is we're creating the multi-user installation. The reason is because single user doesn't work on Mac, and it's a little bit annoying because it means that there's daemons that are running all the time for Nix, which are basically just there to keep permissions correct on a file system. It is what it is. I made my peace with it. It's the price of entry. Okay, so yeah, would I like to see more detailed? No, I don't. Can I use sudo? Yes, you can. I am ready. Let's go. Type in my password and let's go. So look, this might take a while. As we go through this, there's going to be lots of things that might take a while, and I will absolutely be chopping the video so you don't have to sit and watch them all happen. I will either speed it up or I will just cut it. Kind of the initial getting going involves a lot of downloading and installing and other things like that. So that's what it is. Okay, we're back. It finished installing. It wants me to go to a new shell and run this command here, which I'm going to copy. I'm going to open a new shell. We're going to make that one a lot bigger in font size. We're going to get rid of this sucker over here. And we'll try running that. Now, this is going to take a little while, but let's parse it first while we let it run. Nix-shell is kind of an old school way of running things without really installing them. So it puts them in Nix store, but it won't install it in your environment except for a temporary shell that it's kind of a sub shell that it launches. So it's going to make the list of programs after -p available, nix-info. And in this case, it's actually just going to run it and then return instead of dropping you into a new bash shell. And so it's going to run this command nix-info-m. So what it's doing now as we talk is installing all the stuff. That's what all that output was. And then it ran the command like this. Now, for fun, we can do something a little bit different, and we can get rid of this --run, and we can just say nix-shell-p nix-info. I have to press the delete key every time because the repeat is set so low on this machine. We'll fix that later. That should have been instantaneous. I don't know why it was slow. This is a virtual machine. There are other things going on. So if I say nix-info -m, cool, it's there. It's installed in my, this command is basically available to me right now. It's kind of sort of installed in my environment. And I don't know what happens if I just hit nix-info without any of that. It's uglier, I guess. If I get out of here and I try to run nix-info, it's not going to be available to me. It's not found, right? So nix-shell is a way to like sort of temporarily try out a program. Okay, cool. It's installed. We don't have to do anything else until we actually try and make things happen. So look, right now, if you wanted to, you could start installing things. You could, straight up do installs. There's the nix-env commands and things like that. I don't like these commands. I don't use them. I prefer to have my machine like derive from a declarative text file or a set of text files. And so that's what we're going to do here today. And we're going to do it using something called flakes. Flakes are cool because they allow you to sort of any given repository of configuration or software or whatever can have its own flake, which you can then instantiate. You can drop things into your shell, or you can just run it directly or whatever. It's a pretty cool thing. So one thing that we can do, though, because everything's quite ugly and we don't have to live like that, we can use this idea of nix flakes to execute a ZSH shell that has a little bit more in the environment. It's not the environment I really like, but it's one that will kind of do. Now, we're going to use these flakes, and these flakes are considered to be experimental features. And that's annoying because they've been around forever. They haven't changed at all. They're not going to change. They're not really experimental. People need to get over themselves. But we have to put all this extra stuff into our nix command, and then we can just say run, and we can specify a GitHub software that has a flake in it. In this case, I'm going to go to, this is my account, Zia Marie, PW, Patrick Walsh, my initials, ZSH, right? Okay, now what this is going to do is it's going to grab a ZSH shell. It has some ZSHRC stuff, a couple plugins. It has some other things that it's going to put into the environment, like ripgrep and FZF and some stuff like that, so that it's available. It'll just make things slightly prettier and better. It's also downloading a kind of a sister repository, which is PW and then NVim, which has my nice setup for NVim. Now, my nice setup for NVim is not that impressive when it's run in the Apple terminal, because the Apple terminal only supports 256 colors. I can't use nice colors. It doesn't have the good fonts. I don't have nerd fonts installed. I have nothing installed yet. So when I install all this and use it, at first it's going to be a little bit ugly, but it'll make our lives progressively better. Okay. It's got to download and install the internet right now. It's got some Rust projects that it's actually going to have to build because they're not binary cached, because I haven't set up a cache that would have them in it, and we're doing everything from scratch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just sort of jump cut from here straight through till this thing actually running. I said nix run this flake, and because there's a default command, which is ZSH, it's just going to drop us into a ZSH shell in a minute. Well, for you, it'll be like, okay, so we're back. Cool. We're now in a ZSH shell that should be a little bit better. The main things that are different is that we can have slightly nicer things. We can see what directory we're in over here on the side. Okay, good enough for now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a source directory. Source, and we'll call it system config. Okay, nothing there right now. Cool. We're gonna create a flake.nix file, so we'll start by touching that, and we're gonna launch my NVim. But before we get into that, and it doesn't like things because reasons. Okay, so we'll leave that there for the moment. Oops, and it's ugly. Sorry for that. Like I said, it's not my normal color scheme. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about a couple of things. I want to talk to you about some different components that come together to make a system be controlled by nix. Now, like I said, you can use nix as just a standard package manager. Just call it install or remove or whatever, and that's fine. It's just not what I'm showing you today. A flake has something called inputs. Without getting into this too much yet, that's going to have sort of the places where we're getting our software from. Okay. This is all written in the nix language, which isn't like normal languages in that you can't do normal statements. You can't have it do side effects. You can't tell it to echo something to the screen. You can't tell it to do much. Basically, what you're doing is essentially generating a big dictionary of keys and values that are nested. And there's functions and other things that go into that, but you can never have an empty value. You can't have an if statement without an else statement. It's not like it's fully expressive, and you can't interact with the broader system. It's very constrained. It's meant to say that for some given set of very definable and understandable inputs, there will be some set of outputs, and that's that. And so you define your starting point for inputs, and then we'll have our outputs as well defined in the flake, okay? And we'll give it some kind of description because that's just good practice. My minimal flake, let's say. Okay, it requires semicolons at the end of almost everything. It just is what it is. Because we're using my envim, it's got the LSP in here for nix parsing and for formatting and other stuff, which is kind of nice. So, cool. Let's start with nix packages. This is where we get most of our software. It's a giant mono repo with recipes, called derivations that say how to build software, basically. And what we're going to do for that is we're going to call it nix packages. We're going to specify the URL. The URL we can put in a kind of simplified format. We're going to say nixos/nix packages, and then that's the GitHub repo, and that would be enough to just leave it there. But we're going to specify in this case also a branch, and we're going to use the unstable branch. Now, why am I using the unstable branch? Unstable sounds bad, not as bad as it is. It's like the rolling release. It's constantly grabbing updated software, period. That means it could be grabbing breaking changes too. Other options here would be, something like nix packages dash, is that right? The right thing. Now, in my actual config, the way I would do this is I would actually define a stable branch and the unstable branch, and I would have most of my stuff come by default from stable and the most recent release. They have two releases a year in May and in November, and I would have certain things that I want to be just more on top of changes with coming from unstable. Now you can do that. You can mix and match. You can do whatever you want. Stable basically is not supposed to do breaking changes, just security patches for periods of time. So they do have updates available on that, just not always. Okay, so that's the first thing. The next thing we're going to do is something called Home Manager. So this is just where we get our software from. This defines a bunch of things. Here's some piece of software named ripgrep. I'll install it in your system. I can get it from nix packages. Cool. Home Manager is a way of managing Nix specifically configs for software. So you can link configuration files into your home directory. It's making changes to your home directory by symlinking things into place. It can also generate those for you. It has all these modules which have these nice configuration options that auto-generate those config files for you and put them into the right places where software generally expects them. That's part of the Nix community. Set Home Manager, and we'll just specify master at this point. Okay. Now, because we want anything related to that to be using the same Nix packages so it doesn't get confusing, we'll do this follows syntax. All right, so manages, configs, links things into your home directory. Basically, that's what that's about. All right, and the last thing we're going to get is nix-darwin. And this, controls system level software and settings, including fonts. And really the main reason why we're even bothering with it is fonts today, but also because when I do systems, I like to specify as much as possible. Like, hey, what's the keyboard refresh rate I like? And, all my Finder options and preferences. You can specify pretty much all those things through here so that you don't have to manually set it on a new system. Cool. We'll call that Darwin. These are arbitrary names that I'm putting over here on this side. And we'll give it a URL, github:/nll7/nix-darwin. I'm not going to specify the branch. And we'll do the same thing with the follows, except we'll do Darwin. Oops, Darwin. Okay, so we've specified some things. You understand what it is. The Darwin stuff basically does system level changes, fonts, preferences, etc. The way we're going to thread this together is the Darwin is going to call Home Manager, and most all of our packages to be installed will be defined as part of our Darwin install or our Home Manager install, and they'll both reference into Nix packages for that. Okay, so I'm going to walk through building a really basic flake as basic as I could meaningfully make it with reasonable examples in it, showing you what it looks like. So we've defined our inputs. We won't need any others. And I'm basically, because I can't copy and paste into the VM, I'm going to just type out some things here, and I'll try and explain some of them. There's this kind of a special namespace, Darwin configurations, which we'll use so that the Darwin utilities, there's this Darwin rebuild utility. It knows to look for a Darwin configuration key. That's where it's going to look for stuff. And then it has to have the name of the machine. Now you can specify names, or you can have it default to whatever the name of the machine is. And if you were paying attention, this is called demos virtual machine with dashes. That's what this is right here, right? So we'll go back in there. We'll call this demos dash virtual dash machine equals. Cool. And then I'm going to say it equals, and oh, I kind of messed up already. We need to make this actually a function that takes an input of inputs. So everything inside this inputs thing here is gonna be passed along. Cool. So I'm going to call inputs dot darwin.lib.darwin system. So basically this Darwin package here is providing a function, and they put it in this kind of lib namespace called Darwin system. And that's what we're doing here. And look, it's hard to tell the difference between one thing and the next, but this is a function, and these are about to be parameters we're passing to that function. Put a semicolon so I don't forget it, and so things don't stay red. Okay. Everything in here has special meaning to Darwin, and it's things that it expects. I'll show you in a minute how to figure out what you can do, but let's start with just the basic. So system, and there's ways to make this more generic, but we're just going to spell out that this is AArch64 Darwin, which is what we're running right now on this machine. We're going to import inputs.nix-packages, and in doing that, we're going to also specify a system so it knows kind of which recipes apply. Same deal there. All right, we'll save that. It'll format it. Cool. Right. We kind of have something that's minimally viable at this point, but it's not very useful without modules. Modules is basically the input to the Darwin system where we can specify all of our configuration parameters and such like that. All right, so with the modules, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do everything inline, and we'll come back, and towards the end of this thing, we'll refactor and show ways to maybe more nicely organize it. By doing it inline, I hope it's kind of more obvious what's going on. I'm going to use parentheses to group this, because what we're doing here is this square bracket means we're in a list. Lists are space separated. The trouble is that when you call parameters to functions, they're also space separated, which is confusing. So in this case, we're going to have to group. So I'm going to make a function, something with a colon. This basically indicates that this is a function by putting that colon there. That's it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to accept packages and anything else that gets passed along to me so it doesn't whine at me later. And that's a function. And then I'm going to have access to the packages variable inside this function. Okay, so what now? Well, this is where we put, here go the Darwin, preferences and configuration. All right. Let's go figure out nix-darwin. So if we go to the homepage for nix-darwin, there's a lot of stuff about how to install it. We'll come back to this. But what I'm interested in right now is we're creating this flakes setup. And I don't care about any of that because I want to create a minimum viable flake. And here's the reference documentation of all the options is available here. It can also be accessed with man-configuration.nix, which is great once you have it installed. Okay, so looking in here, make that slightly bigger. What am I looking at? configuration options, documentation.enable, whether to install documentations of packages from environment.system packages into the generated system path. That's probably a good idea. There's a lot of stuff in here. It's probably a good idea. We're going to skip most of it though, but I'm showing you that this page or that man page, which is exactly the same material, it explains a lot of what you can do, and this is how you figure that kind of thing out. So one thing I want to do is I'm going to search in this page for programs.zsh. Okay, so whether to configure the ZSH as an interactive shell. So I want to actually set up ZSH as my shell in the system. I'm going to install it for all users, which means I'm going to do it here under in the nix-darwin module. Okay, so programs.zsh.enable equals true. That's going to automatically install it for me. Now I could have just had it installed. In this case, when you do it like this, it creates some default configs, and we can add more things to add, like have specific configurations, which we're not going to do right now. And then I'm going to say environment.shells equals packages.bash and packages.csh. Oops. Cool. So that was in here under environment.shells. It's a list of things. Sure. All right, next, let's specify the login shell. This is the default for everybody. Environment.login shell equals packages.csh. All right. Next, I don't want to always be doing this like -- experimental options, flakes stuff I did earlier. So I'm going to do this next.extra options, and this is basically specifying things that go into the nix global config file. And we're going to say experimental features equals nix command and flakes. And this is a way of doing a multi-line string with the two single quotes. All right, let's do a couple more things. System packages. Let's just do something for the sake of something. Core utils, perhaps. If you want to know, all right, what's available? Let's go to search.nixos.org. You'll spend a lot of time here. I'll click on unstable because that's where we are. And if I say core utils, this comes up. There's also other variants on it. And I can click on the home page, which is going to take me, to GNU in this case, okay? Or the source for it, which will tell me a lot more about it, and is something that we'll talk about later. But that's core utils. That's something I installed. That's enough for now. All right, let's say system dot. Well, we map our caps lock key to escape because it's way more useful. And now I'm going to do fonts. Yay! Fonts.fontdir.enable equals true. Now you might not want this. Danger. This will make sure that only the fonts in this list are installed in your system. And so if you've installed fonts in other ways, just kind of freewheeling installing them, cool. Set this to false, and it won't control things, but it will still install stuff. It just won't ever uninstall if you remove things, including from your config here. So I like it. I like to have it installed. So fonts.fonts equals, and what we want to make things nicer for our editing experience and everything else is we want packages.nerdfonts. Now, it happens that there's a lot of nerd fonts. Let's see. What can I see here? I can see, hey, this is how I would install it if I just wanted to freewheel it. nix-os, this is what I might do, is put under system packages. Actually, you wouldn't want to do that. That's not right because its fonts are special. You wouldn't want to do any of this here. But I'm going to click on source. And this is going to take us to the file that basically defines how nerd fonts are pulled together. the important thing that I want to show here is that it has this little bit at the top that says to select only certain fonts, put a list of strings to fonts. Every key in shaz.nix is an optional font. It takes such a long time to install all the nerd fonts, and I don't really want them all, that we're going to actually go check that out. So if I go up a directory and I go to shaz.nix, here's a list of all the fonts that it's actually fetching. Those are their hashes. And we're just going to use Meslow for the purposes of what we're doing right now. So going back to here, instead of just specifying this, which would be fine, this is sufficient. Again, if I wanted everything, I'm actually going to override. This is something you can commonly do, is you can override kind of parameters. And I'm going to say what parameters I'm going to override. But because I'm in a list, I need to put this whole stupid thing around with parentheses around it, or it's not going to work out right. Okay. And then I'm going to say, fonts equals, and then I'll just specify the one. We'll put a semicolon there. And am I missing a semicolon? No, everything's good. So that's fonts. Cool. Let's make this even slightly wider. All right, what's next? Services.nix-daemon.enable equals true. Basically, this says that the thing that we installed with that bash script at the beginning, I want the nix-darwin to manage it so that it gets updated over time. Otherwise, it'll never update, and that would be annoying. So this is an enable yes on that. Okay, now let's do just a few example system level preferences. So for the Finder, let's just do for the Finder, let's say Apple show all extensions equals true. Cool. Coming back here to the Darwin manual, there should be in here, what was that I was just doing? Apple show interesting. Apple show all extensions. Huh, it's in two different places. Look at that. Curious. Let's turn it on in both places. We can also do, for Finder, we can do this one underscore fx show POSIX path in title. Good enough for now. Let's make the doc auto hide. And that's, let's see, system.defaults.doc.auto hide equals true. And then let's do a couple more of these NS global domain ones. Let's do initial key repeat equals 14 is what I have here. And let's do key repeat equals 1. So that's where I'm holding down J and it's not moving very fast, and that's sort of annoying, and it takes a while before it starts, so this speeds that up a bit. All right. Honestly, I think that's good enough for showing you what you can do with nix-darwin. That's basically the end of what we'll do out of here. I obviously, in my configs, I have a lot more stuff that I've put in. I specify that I want Fahrenheit, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, so that I better specified my system. But this will get you started. So the next thing we're going to do then is Home Manager. Okay, now Home Manager is a little funky in that it has a whole thing too. And let's bring up Home Manager. Okay. This also isn't super helpful, but if you're looking for configuration options, which we'll need in a minute, that's pretty useful. And we'll look at some of those here in a minute. Okay, but what we're going to do is, well, we're inside a list and we're about to call a function, so we got to put it in parentheses. Cool. We're going to call inputs.homemanager. Darwin modules.homemanager. This is some funkiness basically specific to flakes. Okay. And now we're going to set home manager equals. This is the parameter to that function, that home manager function here that we're calling, that came from the home manager package that we loaded as inputs. Home manager equals. And let's set some things. Use global packages true. Let's use user packages true. I forget what those do, but everything breaks if you don't have that. And then now we're going to say, okay, users dot, and then this is the username. Now this will automatically trigger if you are that user. And if you look back here, oh no, I don't want to enable dictation. Who am I is demo. And so we're going to say users.demo .imports equals a thing, and somewhere I'm missing a semicolon. There we go. Okay, so much like inside the nix-darwin stuff, we're actually going to set up a module in here. And again, we're inside a list now, and I'm about to call a function, so we'll get that going in there. And we're going to pass in packages and whatever else we need to. And then this is basically where I specify everything is here. Specify my home manager configs. Whoops. Okay. So let's pick a few. The way to say what I want installed into my environment as user demo is going to be with home.packages. And that's going to be equal to a list of things like packages.ripgrep, which is like a grep minus r replacement, packages.fd, packages.curl, packages.less, and you get the idea. I can specify things like session variables. These are specific to me and not system-wide, although I can do something similar system-wide with nix-darwin. And I can say things like, pager equals less. Cli color equals 1. Editor equals nvim. Okay. And needs a semicolon. The tree sitter formatting as you go does not agree with everything else, something I need to fix. All right, so now looking in here, this is the configuration options for Home Manager. It's very much like that nix-darwin stuff, but it's a different set of options available. You can't use these inside the kind of nix-darwin stuff we were doing earlier. This is inside a Home Manager area, and you can specify things like your email accounts or whatever. I'm going to specifically look at some programs. Let's look at programs.bat. If I scroll through there, I would find it. So bat is an alternative for cat, but the syntax colors things. And I'm just going to say enable equals true. Now I could just put bat up here in this list of home.packages, and that would be fine. But I can specify bat configurations, which is kind of handy. So I can put in extra information that I want. Okay, I can also specify things that it might call, like apparently bat diff, and I don't even know what this stuff is, but apparently there's a bunch of bat extras that you can add on. Cool, I should actually look into that. Sounds interesting. But using bat as our example, we're going to say programs.bat enable equals true. And we're going to use that programs.bat.config.theme equals too dark, because I like how that looks. And then let's do that with a couple other things. Let's go do FCF. And for FCF, there's one that says enable ZSH integration. Cool. Let's enable EXA, which is like an LS alternative. And let's enable Git. We're going to need Git. Let's do ZSH. Oops. And ZSH will do a couple extra things. Let's do enable completion. Let's do enable auto suggestions. Let's enable syntax highlighting too. There's an awful lot more you can do with programs.zsh in Home Manager. We picked a couple. Auto CD, CD path, There's also a whole thing with ZSH package management, so you can install ZSH plugins and stuff like that, kind of like as an alternative to my ZSH or something of that nature. There's a ton in here. This will do us for now, I think. Did I get everything I want? Let's add some shell aliases. Let's make ls have colors. And give slashes at the end of things if they're directories and stuff like that. And while we're at it, let's give ourselves a nicer prompt. And lastly, we're going to install a halfway decent terminal so we can get more colors, so we can make things much better. And we're going to do that with Alacrity. Now, I like Alacrity. I used it a lot. I've switched to Kitty personally recently for various reasons. And Alacrity is faster, but they're basically comparable because I was using tmux within Alacrity and it was creating me some problems with nice fancy, underlines and strike throughs and things like that I wanted. When you use Kitty as the multiplexer compared to Alacrity with tmux in it, it's like the same speed. Anyway, we're going to use a slightly different syntax here. We're going to say enable equals true, settings equals, let's just say settings.font.normal.family equals Meslo LGS nerd font mono, which is something we specified the Meslo family of fonts to be installed, and we'll say settings.font.size equals 16. All right, that's it. That's my entire setup here. At this point, we have like a bunch of programs with some options specified for Home Manager, which is specific to my user demo, and we have some global settings specified for the macOS system as a whole. And yeah, that should do it. So once you have your kind of initial flake set up and whatever you want, what happens next? Well, the very first time you have to bootstrap. Let's come back here. And we're bootstrapping with flakes. And the way that works is with a command like this. Oh, maybe I should make it smaller. With a nix build command. Now, I'm going to show you this, and it's going to fail, but I'm going to show you it anyway. So that's weird. Shouldn't that say -- flake? Well, anyway, we'll see what happens here. Probably I'm going to need to specify the experimental features, but let's try it without it. Let's do what they have. Because I'm, what directory am I in right now? I'm in the system-config directory. So we're just going to say nix build.pound-darwin configurations demos virtual machine, and then .system. Okay, so this is guaranteed to fail for multiple reasons. All right. Ugh. Do I have the ability to? Oh, I do. Good. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say, yeah, extra. Pretty soon we won't have to do this anymore. Experimental features. We're going to say nix-command and also we're going to add flakes. Try it again. Wow, I'm surprised it's doing this much. Huh. Oh, okay, here we go. Called without required argument modules. Did I screw something up? Other than what I know I've screwed up. Okay. That went in the wrong spot. There we go. Inside this Darwin system has that modules bit. Oh, everything's so indented. It's terrible. We'll deal with that later. Okay, let's try this again. All right, well, let's go after the thing that I know is wrong. So flakes don't like to work unless they're in a Git repo. So a flake just sitting out here like this one is, I'm surprised we didn't get an error sooner. So let's go ahead and deal with that. Now, I'm actually going to get out of my ZSH here for a second just to make a point. If I say git init, it's going to pop up and it's going to ask me to install Git. But this is being installed by Apple, and like that's not how I want things to be installed. I'm going to, I specified Git elsewhere in my, I think I did anyway, grep git. Okay, let's try that again. Grep git flake.nix. Yeah, programs.git.enable. There's a lot more I can specify to get my, .git config right. But so that will come in later. So what I'm going to do in here instead is I'm just going to say nix shell, give me git in a nix shell. Cool. Now I'm going to say git init. All right. Now, it's still not going to work right because I haven't added anything. But I'm going to say git add dot, and I don't even have to commit it. That will be good enough. I'm going to go back to my pwn zsh so we can get that going. Okay. Because that'll make my nvim environment available to me. So now with that available, like with flake in there, things should hopefully go better. Nix build dot pound. It's going to warn me again. Dot demos virtual machine dot system, right? And it's not going to like that I don't have things going. I really don't ask again. Extra experimental features. Okay. Damn it. All right, so we need a home.state version, and we're probably going to need that for both of them because I forgot to do it in both cases. So let's see, this is a home.state version. Right, and that's going to be equal to 22.11. So this is a thing that actually is basically a backwards compatibility mechanism, so that you don't have to change your config until you're ready to. Like, don't change this when you change, package input. Leave it alone. Like, you have to go check and see what all is breaking if you make a change with that. And we're going to have that same thing with state version up here. Probably, maybe not. I'm going to put it in anyway because I want things to work. All right. So I'm going to build that again. I come back out here. Whoops. Okay. So now what happened when it built? Oh, it's such a messy screen. We will fix this. There's this new result directory. And inside this result directory is a symlink to this nix store. And everything that you build and everything that it builds and everything that it builds gets its own nix store directory. In this case, it's a darwin-system, and it's got a whole bunch of things. This is what we just built. Now, going back to the nix-darwin, and all the way back here, it says we should run this result swbin darwin. Now this is something you only do it like this the first time, and we're going to have to modify that slightly because we didn't put our config in that directory. But we're going to go like this, and tilde slash source / system config. Now I expect us to get some errors here that we have to go through and fix. And this is normal for your first install, unfortunately. I keep hoping that they'll fix it. But it's no big deal because we're going to copy and paste the suggestions. Okay, so we're going to update synthetic.conf because we're running 13.1. We're going to call this. And now, in theory, we're back in action. Let's try that bootstrapping step again. Okay, so now good news is it's setting a bunch of stuff up. It's actually installing our config now. Bad news, it did hit a couple of problems. And if we go back up to this could not create hard link. That's pretty normal. The /nix file system, it can't hard link from there to other places on the drive. You only see that the first time you're installing a font. So the big thing is that etsy nix.conf is in the way, and so is etsy shells. And what we're going to do is we're going to actually just delete them because we're going to let nix control those files going forward. So we're going to say delete that and delete etsy shells. Okay, and then we're going to do our bootstrap step yet again. Okay, and that time we didn't have any errors. Boom, that's huge. We basically just finished getting everything installed. So, is everything really installed? I don't know. Is Alacrity here? Well, it wouldn't be. It wouldn't be here exactly. First of all, let's quit out of here. Let's before we get out of this, let's say git add dot git commit -m initial config. Okay. If I had said programs.git I think username and .email and stuff, I could have configured all this in my config file, and I didn't. It's okay, no big whoop. So what we're going to do is we're going to quit. We're going to create a new terminal window, because in the new terminal window we'll get our new ZSH environment. Oftentimes you have to relaunch a terminal environment when you redo this stuff. So this now has a whole bunch of stuff in our path, probably. Actually, not that much. But what it's done is it's created this nix profile /bin and this Etsy, per user demo, which is my user bin, run current system. Like basically all these paths are basically symlinks into the nix store. So let's go look at one of them. ls-l ~nix-profile. Okay, that's actually going to this nix var nix profiles per user demo profile. Cool. And if I look inside this directory, what am I going to find? Apparently nothing. Let's look at the next thing. Let's look at this one. Here's all the things that that I had installed. Actually, I don't know what is or where that came from, but Starship was something we said to install. Ripgrep is something we said to install. ZSH is something we said to install. These are all symlinks now out to here. So Home Manager is managing all this symlinking stuff. It's basically so we don't have to have every single one of these in our path variable, which could run out of space at some point, right? But this is why we have some nicer looking things. All right, so what about, that? Oh, now we're getting somewhere. Cool. But it's sort of weird to launch it from terminal. Where does it actually live? Let's quit out of here and let's go open the Finder and see what's going on. This kind of sucks. You'll see this is a big problem. We'll come back to it. But there's a system-wide applications folder, and it doesn't have any of this stuff we just installed in it. It does have a nix apps link, and it'll be empty. And that's because we didn't install this. Nix apps is for things that were installed with the Darwin module, and we didn't install Alacrity that way. We installed it with Home Manager. Now, Home Manager, that means that we look in our user's demo directory, and it's going to put its things in the home directory, which is what it manages. And it has this Home Manager's app. And finally, there's Alacrity. Now, that's not how you're going to want to launch this in the future, but for right now, let's go with it. So let me quit that. Let's come in here and let's make this a bit bigger. And I'm going to close this Finder window so we can see what we're doing a little bit better. Okay, so good news. My environment is set up. Look at that. I have my alias. I have my stuff in place. I even have Alacrity going. Now if I run nvim, oh, right. Okay. Details. I didn't actually install NeoVim. And there's a reason why I didn't install NeoVim. It's because I didn't want to install the regular vanilla NeoVim with no configuration. I wanted one that I've already tricked out so I can do cool things like we were showing before. Which means I'll just use Vim for a second here. And I'm going to show you how to install a flake. So, okay, we're going to lose all of our syntax coloring and everything nice, but there you go. Oh, it's so ugly. Must I? Alternately, we could do it like this. Nix run GitHub : okay. Oh, that's so much better. All right, we're going to get this installed into our environment, this thing that I just ran directly. So I called nix run. I basically running it straight out of that remote thing. Because we loaded up my ZSH, it was already installed on the system, actually, kind of in the nix/store. So that's why that was fast. So let's get, tricked out nvim. And we're going to say pwnvim.url equals. Cool. Okay, done and done. But just having it as an input doesn't actually install it anywhere. So what we have to do to make it better, things are still slow. Oftentimes, a lot of these things don't quite kick in until you reboot the first time. After that, they'll update more live. So we will reboot here in a minute. But what I want to do is I want to come down here to home.packages, and this is where I'm going to install this. And let's just make some space, and let's say inputs dot packages dot. I have to put the system that it's being built for. This is basically the path in the flake. And if you did like a nix flake show, let's try that. Nix flake show. Okay. So what this is showing is kind of what's available. I have these apps and I have these packages and packages dot, I'm actually building this for all the different systems. And so, but what I want to do is when I want to install it, I want, in this case, I'm going to say packages dot that dot, and I could say either of these default or pwnvim because they're actually both the same. And that'll give me what I want. And so that's what we're going to do. Maybe I'll say .default to show the point. So I want to install that whole thing. Let's save that and hope it formats it nicer. Hey, that's much better. We're going to do some refactoring later, and I'll show you how we can make this all nicer. Another way to do this is to add it as an overlay. And then if it was an overlay, it's basically overriding the packages and adding a, so I could do that. I'm just showing how to use it directly in kind of the least hassle way. Okay, so I'm going to quit. We're going to, first time actually building the system since it's been fully installed. So from now on, we're going to use Darwin-rebuild. Okay, Darwin-rebuild actually switch says, hey, I want you to use this new thing. In this case, I'm going to use a flake. I'm going to specify it all the way out because even though I'm already in the directory, I don't want to count on that when I use my history. Switch flake source system config dot pound, and I'm just going to do dot pound. And I could specify my machine, which machine I want it to build for, if there was a different name, but it will by default assume the name of the current machine, which is that demos machine or whatever, virtual machine. So we're going to say that. Okay, it just added a bunch of inputs. This means that my flake file added some things. Okay, loaded a bunch of stuff. Now, let's create a new Alacrity window. We'll make it big again. Ish. Okay, and at this point I should be able to say nvim, and there's my nice, pretty environment. So much better. And you can see, if I were to, I don't know, mess something up, I have my nerd fonts. My nerd fonts are installed, all the pretty things in the columns and, down here, whatever. Life is pretty good. Oops. If I did that, I can see, oh, quote this expression. Yeah, no kidding. Okay. Whew. What now? So we've got this problem of how do we launch our programs? I mean, I could drag this over here and put it in my dock, but I hate the dock. Also, that should be hidden. Let's go ahead and reboot our system. Now that we have things minimally working, let's go ahead and reboot. If this isn't super fast, I will fast forward it or skip past it, but now what I want to do is I want to use my launcher to find Alacrity. And if I do this, it's not going to find it with Spotlight. Even if it had indexed, it wouldn't find it. And that's for a few reasons. One of which is that Spotlight won't follow symlinks, which is a problem. It's an ongoing thing. There's a lot of solutions for it, and you can search for that, especially if you search, like Home Manager, Spotlight application, something like that. People have solutions that are reasonable in this thread that you can add in that will do it. Here's a thing that will go and copy stuff into the /applications directory each time, or a subdirectory thereof, so it can remove things that disappear. There's some nice approaches to this in here. You can layer them in. At some point, someone is going to actually bake in a fix for this. It just hasn't happened yet. Anyway, that said, so what are we going to do? Well, like for starters, let's go home. Let's just launch it the hard way. And I want to install a program which will follow symlinks, which is a launcher. So it's not Alfred, but it's another one like that. And it's called Raycast. All right, Raycast has been working pretty great for me. I moved to it from LaunchBar. But here's the thing. Let's go see if Raycast is available in Nix packages. One way to do that is to go to search.nixos.org. We can search for Raycast. We can go into unstable to see if it's there. It's not available. This happens a fair bit on the Mac, unfortunately, that certain kind of Mac only packages aren't available in Nix packages. The way we're going to get around this, though, is we're going to deal with Homebrew. So Homebrew is a competing package manager, and it's one we're trying to get away from, and we're trying to get away from things like this. However, nix-darwin can control Homebrew. So you can have a list of things you want Brew to install, and it will make sure that list and only that list is installed. So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to set that up first. We're going to run another stupid bash script off the internet, which I hate. And it's not going to be super fast. So we're going to let that go in the background while we come over here. I keep doing that. And we give everything for a tiling window manager right now. Maybe we'll add that while we're at it. Okay, let's come in here. Let's edit our flake, and let's go see how to do this. So we're going to go to our Darwin section here. Cool. And let's go to the bottom of it. And we're going to add Homebrew. Homebrew equals. Now it's annoying that this doesn't install Homebrew and that you have to install it like this. And now this is installing Xcode, and but oh, it is what it is. How we got to do it. All right, so we're going to say enable equals true, and we can decide how much we want to do. You know, caskargs.no quarantine is nice so that it doesn't prompt you every time you update something. I usually do some things like turning off auto update so that every time I do a switch, it doesn't update. It only updates when I tell it to. I'm going to ignore a bunch of that stuff, and instead we're just going to say global equals, or let's say global.brew file equals true. This is going to use a brew file which it's going to keep up to date, which has the list of brews that should be installed. So that's pretty key to this. Now, this also allows us to control things downloaded from the Mac App Store. So you can specify what things that you've previously downloaded from the App Store that you want installed on this system. I'm not actually logged in to the App Store on this fresh install of macOS, so we're just not going to bother demonstrating that. And then you can do things like brews, and you can also do casks. So we're going to say casks, and we're going to say raycast. And because I'm getting annoyed, we'll also do amethyst. Cool. So that's an example of how to install casks. This is the same as saying brew install cask, or brew install -- cask and these things, right? Now, what about command line utilities that maybe aren't available anywhere? There's one called Trippy that I'll show you. Trippy traceroute. So it's kind of a pretty traceroute. It actually won't work from the VM, but I can install it, and so I'll show you what it looks like here. The thing is that, it has options for cargo install, but we don't want to do that. That means though it would be pretty trivial to create a recipe for building this and installing it on our system, make it an overlay, and add it into Nix packages or contribute it back to Nix packages. Cool. But in this case, it has a Homebrew option, which is brew install Trippy, which is nice, but it has this thing that Homebrew sometimes does, which is this tap. So Trippy isn't popular enough to be part of the main Homebrew repository, and so they want you to do this tap thing. So the way that works, oh, okay, hey, there's something. It's responding again. Let's run with it. Sheesh. So we're going to say taps equals, and then this, Fuji apples 852. And then with that done, I can say brews equals Trippy. All right, that's Homebrew. While we're here, I want to show something else too, and that I'm going to do inside Home Manager. We'll put it at the bottom, sort of. We'll put it right here. And that is how to add like a config file. So in this case, I would like to be able to move about on the command line a little bit easier. And so I'm going to set up a home.file. And then the file I want in my home directory is .inputrc. And I'm just going to inline the text for it. And so things that I care about here are show all if ambiguous, completion, ignore case on, mark directories, so it puts a slash on the end of them, so I know something is a directory when I'm tab completing. Set mark symlink directories on, cool, that too. Set match hidden files off unless I start it with a dot. Let's do set visible stats on, which is another thing that indicates what stuff is. And then let's make a VI mode because it makes me happy. Editing mode, VI insert. Okay, so we've done a few things here. Let's save it all. Let's get out of this file. Let's do our Darwin rebuild. We'll have to open a new window because of course we will, but not for everything. Username for GitHub. That didn't happen before. Now we're not quite done with Homebrew, and I forgot to show you where it said that we have to add something to our path. It's taking its sweet time. Let's get Amethyst going, so at least we can have some. And for that matter, let's get. Oh no. We need to be here. Amethyst. Open system settings. Yes. Better. Okay, now let's fire up Raycast. So Raycast is a launcher. Trippy is installing very slowly. I'm going to skip setup. But we are going to go command comma. We're going to jump into here. We're going to go to applications. And what I want to do is I want to add a directory. I want it to go look at my my applications. And it should pick up everything underneath there. And the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change this because it'll conflict with my host operating system. And I'll just do Command-Alt-R for now. Okay. So, Command-Alt-R, let's see. Hey! All the things. So that's something. Like I said, you can install some stuff that makes it all better. And is Trippy installed? Let's just try. No, it's not. And that's kind of as expected because we need to do something else here. We need to go in and we need to go, well, where are we going to go? I'll do it system-wide. So we'll make it an environment. And we're going to add environment.system path so that everyone has this path. And /opt/homebrew/bin. That's it. But while we're at it, we'll also say environment.paths to link equals applications. Which I think is supposed to put more stuff in the /applications, but it only really matters if you're installing it with nix-darwin, which we're not. So, cool. And let's quit this. Let's fire up a new. We'll get out of here. Okay. That's basically it. At this point, we are set up. We have a working system. It's all good. We can tweak it. We can configure it. We can make it better. We can add a lot more preferences and stuff. My key repeats are much faster than they were. So much nicer. But the last thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and let's get rid of Safari. Let's make this even bigger. The last thing I want to do is I want to refactor it. So this is a pretty basic looking thing. And I'd like to make it a bit easier to work with, especially as it gets bigger. So let's go into Flake. And this is the last thing we'll do to round this out. So as I look through here, what I see is a lot of stuff. It's everything in one file, which is fine, especially when it's relatively small. But we can move some things. So let's go ahead and add by convention, we'll make it a modules folder. And in the modules folder, we'll add a Darwin folder. And we'll also add a home manager folder. That's pretty useful. Okay. And in each of these, I'm going to add a default.nix file. And that means that I can just specify it without specifying the file name. I can just specify the directory name when I want to import something, which is what we're going to be doing next. So we'll add a default.nix here as well. Cool. Let's start with Darwin. I'll open that up. There's nothing in it. But this whole thing here is in fact a module. And if I can move it out, I can put it here. Save that. We'll come back here. And all I have to do is specify the path to it. So modules/Darwin/ well, actually, that's good enough. Boom. Done. So we factored that thing out. Let's do something similar with Home Manager. So Home Manager 1, we can come down here. This guy is what we're going to do. Oh, and I wonder if it did it for me. So, one thing is I no longer need these parentheses. So I'll get rid of the parentheses because they're kind of implied here when it's in its own file. Out of curiosity, did it fix that for me? It didn't. So they probably didn't hurt anything by being there, but we'll get rid of them. So now for this demo.imports, we'll just say modules, home manager, good enough. All right, let's go see if that actually worked. I can tell you that it won't, and I can tell you why. Can you guess why? So we'll do a Darwin rebuild, and it says no such file or directory. Okay, why is this? It's because right now I have a bunch of stuff that hasn't been checked in, and it's in this modules folder. And if I add them, if I stage them, I don't even have to commit them. If I add them, which I just did, I just effectively did a git add modules command, except I did it in a way that you couldn't see. Sorry about that. Git status. Okay, there we go. We got things in. Now let's go and Darwin rebuild. Oh, but it hates me. Right, of course, because the inputs parameter hasn't been passed through to the home manager file. So here's what's going on. Right here, I'm calling something. And what I want to have happen is I want the inputs, well, maybe not even the inputs, what is inputs being used for? It's being used for PW and Vim. So maybe we'll actually just do that. I want this to be a parameter coming in. Okay. And then I can delete this. But that's not going to, that's wishful thinking. That's magic thinking right now. If I try to do it, it's still going to fail because there is no, it's missing. So what we have to do is we have to pass it along. And the way we do that is with the extra special parameters, I think. Oh, hey, let's go find out. So this is going to force something else. We're going to inherit this, but that doesn't exist yet. Instead, I'm going to change the notation up here. And we're going to start directly declaring some variables. So let's do nix packages, home manager, Darwin, and PW and Vim. Okay, so those are, and anything else that comes along later, we'll just pass on through under inputs. So now inherit this, we'll pass it into extra special args and it should thread through. But this also means that now I don't have to use this inputs as much. So inputs.darwin becomes just Darwin. Inputs.homemanager is now just home manager. Inputs.nix-packages. So we can simplify things a little bit using that notation, right? See if we've got this working yet. Cool, we just did basically the same thing we've been doing. We just moved things around and made it maybe slightly easier to read. What's another thing that would be good to do? Let's go look through here. So, you know, there's a couple different schools of thought here. This is all nicely outdented, which is kind of nice. But another way to write this would be environment equals, and then come down here, not there, here, and then, you know, do something like that. So that's a different way to write the same thing. Here's another thing. We keep repeating the word packages, which seems kind of silly. I can say with packages and in scope, and then I can delete those. I could do the same thing here, but it's kind of pointless because it's only one thing. Let's see, what else? What else can we do that's of interest? So you can also write that as like system defaults equals. Same idea as before. Maybe made that a little bit easier to read, I'm not sure. We could move this out to its own file if we wanted to. I don't think I'm going to bother right now. This is another good place for a with statement. And you notice this doesn't start with packages, and it's okay. Let's see, what else? Here's another good one. So here's this .input.rc file. Let's go in and create a .files folder. And inside that .files folder, let's create a input.rc file. All right, and then let's take this and let's go put it in the input.rc file. And obviously I messed up with that. Okay, nice. Now instead of saying .text equals, we're going to say .source equals, and we're going to say .files input.rc. Boom. Now I can put a lot of things out there. Now let's remember that that's something that hasn't been added. That's a problem. Git add modules home manager .files. Okay, that'll make it so that works. So we can go ahead and do our Darwin rebuild one more time, and it should be exactly the same as before, just with a slightly different way of making it happen. All right, and then the very last thing I'll leave you with is, hey, why don't we do some better shell aliases? And so where are our shell aliases? There they are. So it might be useful to have like a nix up and maybe a nix, switch alias. This way you don't have to keep typing, this over and over again. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll copy it. And nix switch will do just exactly that. Okay, easy peasy. Now for nix up, by which I mean update, we're going to go ahead and switch to the source system-config directory, and then we're going to say nix flake update, and then nix switch. That's it. Pretty straightforward. Unfortunately, this is changing aliases in a shell, which means I have to launch a new shell. Let's maybe do that a slightly different way. First, let's do it the old way, because we have to, because we don't have aliases yet. Okay, and I'll just start as ESH, which is probably what I should have been doing all along. And so in here now I probably have a nix up, and let's get out of this here. Nix up. So it just updated my flake file. If I go, oh, I didn't pop D on it. Well, anyway, if I go look, my flake.lock file, oh, maybe there was nothing to be updated because we've done this in such a short amount of time. Let me modules, home manager default, and all right, that'll be better. Okay, at this point, I can install pretty much anything I want via bootcasks or nix packages. My friend is definitely search.nixos.org. I spend a lot of time there. You can do it from the command line too with something like nix search nix packages, curl or whatever. No, first time, not going to be super fast. I end up going here like all the time though. It is, they have ways to filter into other things. I mean, I guess I can grep, but whatever. This is where you go to find out. They have some 80,000 packages. It's a lot, right? So there's a lot available. Not everything works, unfortunately, on macOS. I have this great setup for my NixOS machine with Qt browser, and it's fantastic. This says it's marked as broken. If you want to know what the hell is going on, actually it was Qt Web Engine that was marked as broken, which is a dependency of the Qt browser. So on my machine, I installed that browser with my Nix setup, but via the brew cask list. And if you want, you basically go to GitHub, NixOS, Nix packages, head for issues. You can see if people are working on it or what's going on. Qt Web Engine. Status of macOS. So people are working through some of this, and that one isn't working. But just the same, you can usually get what you need. You can usually control it. You can check it in. Highly recommend. Let's see, where are we right now? Git add dot git commit some refactor to better organize. And there you go. This is basically each of everything that we needed done. That's it. I hope this was helpful to you. If you want to get into Nix, you can see how it can be done. All right. Thanks very much, and hope you enjoyed.